I stood in the hallway, arms crossed tight against my chest, listening to the familiar sound of Mila being sick behind the bathroom door. Every gag, every whimper carved another notch into the wall of my dread. The fifth weekend. The fifth time I'd watched my granddaughter go from a bubbly, bouncing child on Friday morning to pale and trembling by sundown. "Stop hovering," Sienna hissed as she passed me a towel in one hand. "You'll just make it worse." I bit my tongue. Again, they said it was a virus. The pediatrician mentioned anxiety. Another suggested a food intolerance, but nothing ever showed up in the tests. Blood work, stool samples, even allergy panels clean. Mila's teacher had told me she was doing fine at school. Eating, playing, laughing, healthy. But like clockwork, Friday evening came. And so did the stomach pain. Only on weekends. Only when Sienna was the one putting her to bed. Only after vitamins. I'd caught a glimpse of the little plastic medicine cup earlier that evening. Mila had hesitated before drinking it. Just for a second, her big brown eyes flicked to me like she was waiting for a reason not to. I almost gave her one. The bottle was unmarked. No label. Just a brown plastic container with a white lid. "Just herbal supplements," Sienna said casually when I asked. "You wouldn't understand. It's a holistic thing." She'd smiled too sweetly, too quickly. Now I could hear Mila's voice weak and raspy, asking for water. My hands clenched. I brought her a cup myself. When I stepped into the bathroom, Sienna was rinsing the sink. She didn't look up. Mila leaned into me as I knelt beside her, whispering, "I don't like the vitamins, Grandma. They burn my throat." I stroked her damp hair and kissed her forehead. "You're going to be okay, sweetheart." But I wasn't sure. Not anymore. By morning, Mila would be curled on the couch, too weak to sit up, and Sienna would be on her phone typing something about another hard night to her social media followers. And I'd be in the kitchen, watching, waiting, wondering. I moved in 3 years ago after Evan died. Sudden cardiac arrest. One minute, he was laughing at the dinner table, the next he was gone. I barely remember the funeral, just Mila's small hand gripping mine, and Sienna collapsing in my arms in the driveway afterward, sobbing that she didn't know how she'd manage alone. So I came. I didn't hesitate. Not just for Sienna, but for Mila. She was only 4 then, still asking when her daddy would come home. I told myself I was there to help. But lately, I'm starting to wonder what I've really stepped into. Sienna's grief shifted quickly. Within months, the tears dried, replaced by curated smiles. Her phone was always in her hand, first to post tributes to Evan, then slowly to document Mila's mysterious illness. I watched the captions change. "Tough night with my warrior princess." "Another ER visit." "Praying for answers." Always with just the right lighting. Always Mila looking pale small, tucked into hospital blankets. She started getting recognized. The neighbor down the street, Jessica, brought over soup and asked if Mila was doing any better. Sienna lit up. "She's a fighter," she said with the same tone someone might use talking about a promotion. Then came the GoFundMe. I found the link on her Facebook page. "For mounting medical bills," the description read. "We just want answers." It had already raised over $12,000. I knew Evan's life insurance left enough to cover years of private care if needed, but that wasn't mentioned. That afternoon, I checked the pantry. 3 medicine bottles sat on the top shelf, each labeled with Mila's name. But none matched what the pediatrician prescribed 2 weeks ago when I took Mila in myself. I remembered the doctor clearly saying they wanted to pause all medications, monitor, observe. Yet here they were, something new, something else. That night, the retching came again. I stood outside Mila's room, heart hammering. I heard Sienna's voice, calm and sweet, saying, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here." She sounded almost content. I closed my eyes and made a decision. Whatever this was, I had to see it for myself. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning through every cough, every bottle, every weekend. Mila's little body crumpled under invisible weight. I picked up my phone and typed the words. I'd been avoiding Munchausen syndrome by proxy. I read quietly, breath shallow. One article described a case almost identical. A mother documenting her child's mystery illnesses, collecting donations, soaking in sympathy, while quietly keeping her child sick. I scrolled, then stopped. A single line struck me like a slap. Perpetrators often appear calm and in control, especially when the child is unwell. The next morning, I drove across town to a specialty electronics shop. The clerk was friendly. He showed me a selection of nanny cams. I chose a bear with glassy eyes and a wide-stitched smile. He asked if I'd had break-ins. I nodded. I want to feel safe, I said. It wasn't a lie. I spent the afternoon rehearsing what I would do, what I would see, what I hoped I wouldn't see. By Friday evening, the house smelled of Sienna's lavender candles. Mila was curled up in her blanket fort, the bear tucked beside her pillow. I positioned it just right, one eye facing the bed, the other catching the doorway. The lens was so small, it vanished into the fur. Mila giggled when I kissed her goodnight. Just one weekend, I whispered. Let me be wrong. At 10:14 p.m., Sienna entered the room. I watched from my laptop. She sat on the bed, stroked Mila's hair, and said softly, "Time for your vitamins, sweetheart." Mila sat up slowly. Sienna handed her a small plastic cup. Mila drank. Sienna wiped her mouth and kissed her forehead. "That's my brave girl," she whispered. I watched it all. Watched her tuck Mila in, watched her leave the room as if nothing happened. By 11:06, Mila was throwing up again. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just sat there in the dark, watching the monitor, my hand covering my mouth, heart hollowing itself out. This wasn't paranoia. It was proof. I waited until the house was quiet before opening my laptop. Morning light crept through the blinds, but my hands were already cold. I plugged in the camera and scrolled to the file from the night before. There it was, clean, digital, undeniable. Timestamp 10:47 p.m. Sienna entered Mila's room without turning on the light. She moved with practiced ease, like this was part of a routine. She sat on the edge of the bed and gently shook Mila's shoulder. "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly. "Time for your vitamin. It'll help." Mila stirred, half asleep. I watched her small hand reach for the cup. She hesitated just a flicker, then drank. Sienna smiled. Not worried, not rushed. Calm, almost satisfied. I paused the video. My fingers were shaking so badly I had to press my palms flat against the desk to steady them. I'd told myself I was overreacting, that grief and fear were making me see patterns that weren't there. But nothing about this looked accidental. I pressed play again and fast-forwarded. Timestamp 11:23 p.m. Mila bolted upright. She stumbled out of bed, clutching her stomach, and disappeared from the frame. A few seconds later, I heard it, the thin, echoing sound of her getting sick in the bathroom down the hall. I waited for Sienna to appear, to rush in, to comfort her. She never did. The footage ran on in silence, the bed empty, the door closed. I sat there until the screen went dark, my chest tight, my thoughts loud and frantic. This wasn't a single moment taken out of context. It was a sequence. Cause and effect. Action and consequence. I downloaded the file twice, once onto my computer, once onto a small USB I'd hidden in the back of my jewelry box. Then I shut the laptop and went downstairs. Sienna was already awake, sipping coffee, scrolling through her phone. "Rough night," she said casually, without looking up. I nodded, forcing my voice steady. Yes, it was. I knew then that seeing the truth wasn't the same as knowing what to do with it, and as I rinsed my cup at the sink, I realized the next step would require more than certainty. It would require courage. I didn't say a word. I wanted to. My throat burned with it, but I didn't confront Sienna. Not yet. Not without more. Instead, I replaced the bear, checked the battery, cleared the memory card. I smoothed Mila's blanket that Friday afternoon and kissed her forehead like nothing had changed. That night I didn't sleep. I sat with the lights off, laptop open, the feed loaded. The room glowed in quiet blue. Mila shifted once in her bed. The bear didn't blink. At 10:44 p.m., the door opened. Sienna stepped in just as she had the week before. She held the cup, whispered the same line. "This will help you feel better, sweetheart." Mila drank. Sienna smiled, brushed her hair back, and left. At 11:19, the footage blurred as Mila stumbled upright and ran off screen. I didn't need to listen to the sound. I already knew. I let the video run, then closed the laptop and sat there with my hands in my lap. It wasn't even shock anymore. It was a weight. Like standing in a room where the air had changed, but no one else noticed. The next morning, Sienna cheerfully told me that Mila might need stronger supplements if this kept up. I nodded. Then I slipped into the laundry room and called the pediatrician's office myself. I asked carefully, quietly, "Does Mila have any prescriptions for bedtime supplements or digestive support?" The nurse hesitated. "No, ma'am. She's not on anything right now." I thanked her and hung up, heart thudding in my ears. Later that afternoon, as I emptied the kitchen trash, I saw it crumpled beneath an empty cereal box. A receipt. Online pharmacy. Unverified distributor. 2 bottles of syrup. Same name I'd seen before. No doctor, no oversight. Just a delivery address and a tracking number. I took it upstairs, folded it flat, and tucked it inside the same drawer as the USB. Whatever Sienna was giving her wasn't prescribed, wasn't safe, wasn't legal. But the worst part, Mila trusted her, called it a vitamin, took it without hesitation. And that trust, the way she sipped from that cup, like it was nothing, that was what broke me. I left the house just after sunrise, the USB and receipt tucked into my purse like contraband. The roads were empty, too early for traffic, too late for second thoughts. I didn't tell Sienna where I was going, just said I had errands. When I walked into the Charlotte precinct, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The front desk officer asked if I had an appointment. I didn't. But when I said I need to speak to someone about a child in danger, they took me seriously. They led me to a quiet room. Then Detective Sarah Martinez entered, mid-30s. Calm eyes, notepad in hand. She let me talk. Didn't interrupt. When I showed her the footage, she didn't blink. She just watched. Then she said, "We need to move fast." Her voice was low. No drama, no raised eyebrows, just certainty. That child's in danger. I handed her the timeline I'd made every weekend, every symptom. The GoFundMe page, the medicine cabinet photos, the receipt from the trash. Martinez nodded. "We'll need a warrant. But we can have eyes on the house Friday night." She laid it out clearly. I'd keep Mila downstairs. Make sure Sienna didn't get her alone. Officers would be in an unmarked van nearby, with another posted across the street as a utility worker. If Sienna made a move, tried to give Mila anything, they'd intervene immediately. I agreed. Of course I agreed, but as I sat there nodding, dread curled in my gut. Because this wasn't just about catching Sienna, it was about Evan. My son, who used to fall asleep with Mila on his chest, who once built her a bookcase shaped like a tree because she said she wanted to read in a forest. He had loved quietly, steadily, and after he died, I'd promised myself I'd protect what was left of him. Now I was preparing to tear apart the home he built, expose the woman he married. It didn't feel like justice. Not yet. It felt like betrayal. But when I got home and saw Mila painting suns and cats at the table, I knew I'd do it anyway. because this wasn't about legacy anymore. It was about survival. Friday came slower than any day I can remember. I made spaghetti for dinner. Mila helped set the table, humming some song from school. Sienna barely touched her food. Her phone buzzed twice during the meal. She ignored both. Afterward, we moved to the living room. Mila and I played cards on the rug, the dog lying between us, tail thumping with every laugh. I kept glancing out the window. The utility truck was parked across the street, just like Martinez promised. A man in a reflective vest pretended to fix a street lamp. At 8 o'clock, sharp Sienna stood up. "Mila looks tired," she said. "Time for bed." Mila frowned. "I'm not tired, Mama." Sienna's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Still, let's get you settled." She reached for Mila's hand. I wanted to stop her. Wanted to say just 10 more minutes. But I stayed still. We had a plan. They disappeared upstairs. I watched the clock tick. 8:15, Sienna returned. "She had her special vitamin," she said, voice breezy. "Should sleep through the night." I didn't move. "Show me the bottle." Her hand paused mid-reach for the remote. "What?" "The bottle," I said. Again, steady. "I want to see it." Her face hardened. "You don't get to question me. I'm her mother." I didn't look away. I let my hand hover over my phone. Sienna saw it. Her nostrils flared. "Unbelievable." "You've been undermining me for months," I said. I interrupted. "Show me what you gave her." That's when the front door opened. 2 officers stepped inside, quiet but firm. One spoke into a shoulder mic. The other nodded to me. I didn't have to say a word. I just stepped aside. Sienna's face crumpled. Shock, rage, confusion all at once. "I want a lawyer," she hissed. "You're all going to regret this." But the officers didn't flinch. One of them turned to me. "Where's the medicine upstairs?" I said. "Second shelf in the bathroom. It's not labeled." They moved fast. One up the stairs, the other staying with Sienna, who was now pacing. And I finally let myself sit down. Because the part where I had to be silent was over. They moved quickly once the call was made. 2 more officers entered the house within minutes. Their voices were quiet, but firm, direct. Sienna's eyes darted from face to face like a trapped animal. Then she made a break for it toward the stairs. "No," I said, stepping in front of her. I didn't yell. I didn't move. I just stood there, blocking the path. "You don't understand." She screamed. "She's my daughter." But the officers were already behind her. She didn't make it past the first step. Upstairs, one officer called out, "She's here. The girl's here, looks pale, stomach distress. We need an ambulance." They brought Mila down, slowly wrapped in a blanket. Her face was flushed, her forehead clammy. She reached for my hand without opening her eyes. I held it tight. The other officer emerged with the bottle in a clear evidence bag. Unmarked. Syrup consistency. Matching earlier description. They read Sienna her rights while she sobbed into her palms. Cried like a mother who'd been wronged. It would have been easier to believe if I hadn't seen the footage. At the hospital, I sat beside Mila's bed while machines beeped gently. Nurses moved around us, focused but calm. One doctor spoke low to another near the doorway. I heard him say, "Repeated exposure. It builds up. She's lucky. Another dose or 2, this could have killed her." I thought I'd cry. But nothing came. Just a heavy stillness. Later, a detective arrived, different from Martinez. He showed me paperwork they'd recovered, online orders of the syrup dating back weeks. Multiple pharmacies. Different names used. And then the last piece, a life insurance policy. Taken out 2 months ago. Mila listed as the insured. Rachel Sienna listed as the sole beneficiary. $250,000. They charged her that night. Attempted murder, child abuse, fraud. She didn't say a word when they took her in. Back at the hospital, Mila stirred, reached again for my hand. I kissed her forehead. They wheeled her in for testing, and I walked beside her step for step because the only thing that mattered now was making sure she'd never be alone again. 6 months passed like a slow fog lifting. The trial began in spring. Bright skies outside, sterile light inside. I sat in the witness box, my hands folded too tightly in my lap. The prosecutor asked me to describe the footage. My voice caught twice, once when I said the word vitamin, and again when I said she never checked on her. The jury stared. Some scribbled notes. Others blinked too often. I glanced at Sienna's parents. Her mother looked down the whole time. Her father looked at me once, just once, with eyes like splintered glass. I wondered if they'd noticed anything ever, or if love had made them blind too. They played the video for the court. I couldn't watch. I'd memorized every frame. The defense tried to paint her as unstable, confused, overwhelmed. They said she needed help, not punishment. But the prosecutor's closing words settled over the room like a stone. She didn't act confused. She acted calculated. The jury took 3 days. When the verdict came guilty on all counts, Sienna cried. Not the sharp cries of someone surprised by justice, but the kind you let out when everything's finally terribly real. I didn't feel relief or revenge, just a quiet ache, like something important had cracked in the foundation of us all. The judge gave her 25 years, no parole before 10. Afterward, I was granted full custody of Mila. That night, we didn't talk much. I let her stay in my bed. She curled beside me, thumb tucked under her cheek, still so small. Around midnight, she whispered, "Are you going to leave me too?" I turned and pulled her close. "No, baby," I whispered back. "No, I'm right here. I'm always here." She didn't say anything after that, just breathed, soft and steady. I stayed awake until sunrise, holding the girl my son had loved more than life itself. And the next morning, I made a quiet vow. We wouldn't go back to normal. We'd build something safer than that. It's been a year. Mila hasn't been sick once. She joined the soccer team in the spring, comes home muddy and smiling, and insists she wants to be a veterinarian now for all the animals who don't have grandmas to help them. Her room is messy in a way that feels alive. No cameras, no hidden bears, just a lazy dog at her feet and books stacked crooked by the bed. I bake cookies on Thursdays now. It's become a habit. She always sneaks 2 before dinner and thinks I don't notice. The porch light stays on later these days. Mila likes to read outside after sunset, and I let her. I sit in the rocker listening to her hum while the dog snores between us. I've made arrangements. A trust is in place. The house is in both our names. My sister and her husband have agreed to take her if anything happens to me. I've even revised my will to make sure no one else can touch her future. I don't tell Mila any of this. She doesn't need to carry that weight. Instead, I braid her hair while she talks about school, about practice, about how her friend Bree's hamster bit the teacher and now has to reflect on its behavior in timeout. I laugh. She laughs louder. Some nights I hear her cry out in sleep, just once, and then silence. I don't wake her. I just sit outside her door until the quiet feels right again. Last week, she brought home a hand-drawn card with crooked letters. "Thank you for loving me safe." She tucked it into my knitting basket and never mentioned it. Tonight, as we cleaned up dinner, she looked at me across the sink and said, "You're brave." I didn't answer at first. "I want to be brave like you," she added, wiping her hands on her shirt. I handed her the dish towel. "You already are." And then we went to turn off the porch light together.